excited to spend this time with the Lake Park community. Thank you for inviting me. And I also want to give a quick shout out to Dr. Foyt. I'd had the great pleasure of working with him when he was helping to lead the Glenbard School District for many years. And so it's so nice to see everyone here. And this is such an important time for our country to come together and think about how we connect with each other. And I love what your district is doing around bullying and really making sure that every student feels included and recognized and valued. And so today, the program that I have for everybody that I have for you is one. I'll start off by sharing just my initial story of what it felt like to come to this country as an immigrant, as someone who was a refugee, as someone who didn't know the language, and kind of give a sense of how I learned to even realize that my culture, that I could see strength in my culture, that I had something positive to offer the world. And hopefully that will get everyone in your community and in the thinking about how to recognize each other's strengths, no matter what your background is, where you come from, or whether your family's been here for 300 years, 200 years, or just got here like mine. Everyone's family and background is valuable, and everyone has beauty that they offer the community. And so I'll share a story about that. From there, I'll talk about the power of inclusiveness. Why does inclusiveness matter? Why is it important for us to care about inclusiveness? And what is it? And I'll give my favorite strategy that anybody listening in, whether it's a parent, a teacher, a student, an administrator, can use to build a more inclusive community each and every single day. So I'll share that. And then I know we're all just going through this very challenging time with this pandemic. And everyone is really struggling in many ways to get through it. We've all had to adjust in many ways. So I take my hat off to everybody that we're just all here together. We made it this far. So I'll share one final piece of inspiration around being who you are and finding strength during this challenging time, helping each other find strength. So that will be the presentation. And does that sound good, Ebony? I think that'll be great for your community, right? And then I will jump in with that story that I promised early on. But before I do that, actually, if I were to meet any member of your community, anybody who's watching this presentation right now, if I were to meet you, let's say the airports really get going and open up again, and if I were to meet you at the airport, and if you were to say to me, hey, I heard your webinar, you came in for that National Culture Week, Maui, you came to speak to Lake Park. And if you told me that, if you were to tell me that you liked the presentation, I would shake your hand and say, thank you. But if I were to meet you a year from now and you were to tell me that not only did you like the presentation, but you applied the presentation in one way, you found one way to take what we're talking about and put it into practice, I won't just shake your hand, I'll buy you a sandwich at that airport. I really will. I call it my sandwich bowl, because the point of us getting together here isn't to smile, isn't to talk about culture and how great the world can be. It's we got to put this into practice. We got to take action to make the community stronger. That's each and every single person watching this can take those actions. And I've bought many sandwiches. There's pictures I sometimes show in my PowerPoint of students eating food that I've bought them after they explained to me how they've applied what I taught them. So it really is all about application is so critical. That's why I do what I do. I know that's why the staff is so passionate, is to grow together, right? So here's the story. So my family comes to the United States. We're coming from a refugee camp in Sudan. There was a war in my homeland for 30 years. Just a terrible war where over 1 million people became refugees. And my family got this incredible news that we were going to have the chance to come to the United States of America. And for me, it meant a whole new life. I would have a chance to go to public school. I ended up being resettled in the Wheaton school districts. So I went to school district 200. And I actually, when I was in high school, I was a cross country runner. And I remember in track run, I remember running against Lake Park. You had some really fast runners. I think there was a kid named Matt Zopel or something like that who was really fast, but I really enjoyed that. So I knew who Lake Park was. But when I first came to the States, I'll give an example of an everyday activity that really showed me how different I was. And not different in a good way, different in a bad, scary, like I don't want anyone to talk to me, I just want to disappear kind of way, right? And that was the simple activity of just going to the grocery store with my family. And there was a relatively new experience for us. We didn't have these massive stores like a Jewel when I was in refugee camp. And so I want to paint the picture for everyone here. I want you to imagine you're about to go to Jewel and you're right near the doors, that kind of automatic doors that open up. And right behind you is my family. And a couple things about my family. First of all, in my culture in Ethiopia, there's two foods that we cook everything with, and that's onions and garlic. Onions and garlic, right? And I remember one time actually when I was in high school, my mom told me I need you to go to the jewel and I need you to buy all their onions for an Ethiopian graduation that we're going to have. In our culture, graduation is a big deal. You might have 200 people come to high school graduation. It's almost like a wedding, right? And so I remember still going to Jewel when I was in high school, getting all those onions, multiple shopping carts. Everyone looked at me like I was crazy. The manager couldn't believe I was taking all these onions. When I got home, there were 10 Ethiopian women there, and we don't cater. We cook all our own food, and they chopped up those onions so quick you wouldn't believe it. Threw garlic into these huge pots, just these enormous pots with onion and garlic, and you let that stew simmer for about 2 hours, 3 hours. That's the base for our food, our cuisine. And you know what that means? Every molecule, every molecule of clothing in the house smells like onion and garlic. I always say my teachers never had to take attendance. They could just go like this. Oh, there goes Maui. Okay, you can just smell me from a different part of the building. Right? I had that onion and garlic smell. So going back to the jewel, you're about to walk in. My family's right behind you. We just came to this country, and you start to smell something. We smell like onion and garlic. You don't know what it is. And another thing about my family, my father, he didn't really know how to interact with people very well. And what he always loved to do when he met someone from the United States was he'd always love to say to them, "Excuse me." So for him, excuse me was a 5-second word. You had to say the X like you were trying to hit a home run in a World Series. Then you paused for a couple seconds. Then you said accuse. So really no one knew what he was talking about wherever he went. So now the moment of truth. You're about to walk into that jewel. My family's right behind you. If you're watching this, do me a favor. Just go like this with your hand. Let's see it, Ebony. Just go like this. Stick out your arm and take the other arm and grab that arm. No joke. This is a real story. That's my dad grabbing your arm. Okay? You've never met him. He's used to talking to people like this, like just grabbing their arm and saying something to them, right? And so he gets you by the arm. You turn around, you see my family. We're smelling like onions and garlic. Our clothes don't match. And you know what my dad says? He's going to say to you, Ekus, excuse me, wear sale paper. You got it, Ebony. Excuse me, wear sale paper. No one knew what that meant. I didn't know what that meant the first time. You know what that means? He wants you as a trusted American to go with him to what he calls the sales paper. That's where they have the brochures for what's on sale at Jewel that week. And he's going to drag you over there, and he wants you to go page by page and explain to him what he should purchase for his family for the upcoming week. I'm like, they don't like it when you touch them like that, Baba. They don't like it when you touch them like that. They don't do that in this country. My only job in the United States was to fit in. And I realized very quickly that would never happen. I would never be like the other kids. I didn't look like the other kids. I didn't smell like the other kids. My parents didn't do what other kids' parents did. And the thing was, it wasn't just that I was different. It was a bad different. And I learned early on to be ashamed of who I was. So this shirt that I'm wearing right now, this Ethiopian shirt, I had these shirts growing up, but I never wore it once to school because I felt like that wasn't a safe spot for me to share my culture. I couldn't show up there because I was worried I would be made fun of. I was worried that someone would wonder why I was wearing those clothes and where did I get them from and why was I wearing them. And so once you start to internalize that being different is bad, it really shuts you off in lots of ways. There's a lot of things you could have done, you might have done that you don't do because you're afraid to express who you are. And this is what we don't want at Lake Park, right? We want every student to be able to walk in with who they are, to feel confident in their background, to be in a community where if they're from a different place or they look a certain way or they smell a certain way, they're not going to be judged as bad or they don't feel that way, right? And a lot of times, if you experience this kind of trauma when you were in elementary school or middle school, you still maintain it in high school. So you might think, oh, of course the student doesn't feel this way because we're nice around here, but you don't know what that student went through in elementary school. You don't know what that student went through in middle school. And they still carry those scars with them, right? And what I'll do now is I'm gonna share my screen, and let's see. Can you see that screen there, Ebony? Is it looking good? Just nod your head.
Yeah.
Very good, very good. So this is, be who you are. That's what we want for everyone, to be who they are, right? And so I will say it took me, a lot of people might not believe this, but this is the truth. It took me till I was about 21 years old, when I was a junior at Harvard, before I could go anywhere in the United States and say, you know what? It's my father Haila, my mother Tsiga. They don't look like you do. They don't smell like you do. Maybe they don't talk like you do. But you know what? There's nothing that anybody on the planet could ever do that would make me ashamed of who I am and where I come from. Isn't it sad that it took me that long to get to that point? I was 21. I mean, and that's why what you're doing is so important, Lake Park, to create an environment where people feel like that in high school while they're with you, that they can feel comfortable sharing who they are. And why was it important for me to feel comfortable with who I am? Well, you saw earlier that I was on the Oprah show, that I wrote a book called The Beatles and Angels. Well, I never would have done this if I had gotten to the point where I felt comfortable sharing who I was. If I was still ashamed of who I was, if I still felt like I couldn't share who I was, I wouldn't have become an author. I wouldn't have pursued my dreams of starting this company. I wouldn't have been on the Oprah Winfrey show because I was comfortable in my different and what made me different. That gave me the confidence to step into that. And that's what I would say to any student at Lake Park today who has some things they're ashamed of, some things they're like, I don't know if people are going to accept that about me. For me, it was being an immigrant. For you, it could be a whole wide number of things that make you feel like you're different, your family's different, or something about your life. And the thing we want to avoid is to feel like the things that make us different are our enemy. They're things we have to hide and we can't share them. Because if we do that, we can't experience what I'm sharing with you on the screen, which is when you share who you are from a place of strength and you are confident in who you are, the whole world opens up. The whole world opens up and you're able to meet people and talk to people. And certainly we want everyone here, every student, to get to that spot before they get to college. And they can share who they are more fully there as well, or their next step, whatever that next step is. So that's, I guess, the first thing I would ask everyone to think about today. And one way to get that sandwich at the airport is if you can think of a way that you can step into who you are more fully. If there's some part of who you are that you've not been able to present to the community with confidence, the community is working to create a space where everyone can share who they are. And you should have conversations with staff or others if you don't feel comfortable, so you can get to that point where you can share who you are, because it's really critical. It's actually, it's about even something, it's core to just being alive as a human being. It's even bigger than anything else. It's just the kind of life we're going to have, right? And so the other thing I was able to do is when you saw that my company was acquired by ACT, well, I created classes about the things that made me different, like this, being an English learner, that were very popular and widely used. Again, this would not have been possible if I didn't accept who I was. And I say that again, if you don't accept who you are, it puts a lid on your development in life permanently, in my view. So you have to break through that, right? So how does inclusivity connect to all this? Inclusivity is one of those words we hear about that can seem like, oh yeah, I want to be inclusive. Oh yeah, of course we're inclusive. We don't want to leave people out, but it's actually a lot harder to do than one might think. And even with bullying, everyone's like, well, of course I'm not a bully. Of course I don't want to bully anybody. No one wants to be, like, we all aspire to not be a bully, right? But it can be tougher. Some of the stuff that happens happens without us realizing it. It's subconscious and how it happens. And so I want to give you an example of something I do. If we were actually presenting live and I was at your school and I had you in an auditorium and I was looking at you and these were all the rows, this is the activity I would do with you. So I want you to imagine that you're in the auditorium, you're seated, and these are all each A that you see there on this screen is a different seat. Okay. And what I like to do is I like to divide the audience up. So I would say, everyone in the front row, I don't want you to do this activity. And the rest of the audience, so that would be all the B's here, right? Here's the activity I want you to do. Okay, here's the activity I want you to do. And what I have the folks who are seated in the majority of the seats, what I tell them is, I want you to take 30 seconds and I want you to introduce yourself to someone in the B group only. Okay, and here's how I want you to do it. I want you to pretend that this person that you are about to meet is the person you've been wanting to meet your entire life. Ebony pulled some strings and she brought them here. They're right next to you and you have a chance to meet this person, hug them, jump up and down. Imagine what it would mean to you. Seriously, I want you to think of the person you'd want to meet the most. in the world. You have posters of this person up in your room. You have them on your phone. They're just sitting there right there. Their picture's right there on your phone because you love this person. They're sitting next to you. What would you do? How would you jump up? Would you hug them? Would you take a selfie? Would you go nuts? Of course you would, right? This is your one chance. So we do that for 30 seconds, right? Then you know what I asked that B group? I asked that B group, when you were doing this activity, did you for a second forget about that A group that was not doing this activity? And everybody always says, yes, of course, I was into it. I was connecting. I was meeting my hero. Then I say, okay, this was a 30-second activity, but I want you to think about this for a second. For kids in our schools, a lot of kids in our schools, this is not an activity. This is their life every day. There's a group of kids that are excited to see each other in the B group. They're inviting each other to things. They treat each other a certain way. And it's not that they go beat up the A group. They don't say anything mean to the A group. They don't make fun of them. It's just, I'm not going to treat you the way I treat these other people. And I'm not gonna invite you to my birthday party. I'm not going to be excited to connect with you in this way. I'm not going to ask you about who you are and things like that. So what that tells the A group is over those 4 years is you don't matter. You're not valuable. No one around here is excited to see you or connect with you. And the thing about bullying is we usually notice when someone's gotten punched in the face, or you know what? Of course, that's bullying. Like that's a terrible thing. Being inclusive means that you see everybody and you give everybody a chance to be in that B group for you. So can you truly say that in your interactions at Lake Park? For example, the parents that are watching this right now, when you think about the kind of parents that you connect with, and look, I'm a father of 4 kids myself. I live in Elmhurst. I have 3 kids in public school right now, and one is just an infant, right? I have 2 kids in public school actually. And so when you think about who you connect with, to what extent do you push yourself to connect with people in that A group that may be harder for you to see? What does that group look like for you, right? And this is what being inclusive is all about. It's about realizing that we are all kind of wired to connect with certain groups of people at some level, right? It's not anything mean or hostile or anything like that about it, but understanding that we can very easily go through 4 years or our entire lives never having stepped into the lives of that A group or connected with them in any meaningful way. And that's what we want to avoid, right? And I can tell you for me, when I first came to the States, the first kid that invited me to his birthday party, you know how much that meant to me? That was in first grade. 16 years later, after I graduated from Harvard University, I went back to his house. His name was Matt Poole, and he was serving in the armed forces for our country at that time. But I went, his mom was there, and I knocked on her door and I said, you know what, Miss Poole, when I was invisible, when everyone saw right through me like I didn't exist, you know what? You didn't do that. And I've not forgotten that these last 16 years. That's how we can impact each other. That's how we're meant to impact each other. There are people around you that feel invisible. They're waiting for you to reach out to them. They're waiting for you to invite them. They're waiting for you to make them part of that B group, right? And when you do that, you have no idea. They might come back to you 16 years from now, 20 years from now and say, you know what? You never knew, but you actually were the reason that I was able to have a decent experience in high school. You know, I had a parent here in Elmhurst blow my mind, told me that they had never had another family invite them to their home one time in the 5 years I've been in Elmhurst. It blew me away. And I felt bad. I felt guilty. I was like, wow, I'm in with this crew where we invite each other all the time. We're straight up barbecuing all the time. We're doing all this stuff. And you mean to tell me that no one has invited you once in 5 years? Not once. Just the parents told me that. Really made me sad. I'm sure a lot of you would feel sad and really despondent if you found out there were members of your community like that. They were that left out. And it's not out of malintent that you meant to jack them or anything like that, right? You meant to ignore them, make them feel bad. But this is why being truly inclusive is so hard. We all want things. Of course, as a parent, I want my kids to be included. I want to feel like I have friends. I want to know somebody when I'm coaching my kids' team. I'm focused on my needs, right? Same thing for you. You show up, you're focused on your needs. It's only human nature. Students, you want someone to sit next to. You want someone to connect with. Again, it's only human nature. What makes us special, what we're after is we want to be able to step outside our own lives and realize that everything that we want for ourselves, there are some people in our community who have zero access to that. And we have to proactively be the ones to reach out and connect with people. That's why at the beginning of school, you can ask my kids, I always give them 2 messages. I have, for example, a 6th grader right now is my oldest. I've given this message every year since kindergarten. What I always tell them is there's two things about our family when it comes to school. First is we're not lazy. Just so you know, we work hard. We do all the assignments, we turn everything in, but we work hard. Hey, I think that's great advice for any kid out there, any parent out there. Tell your kids that, look, we're a hardworking family. We get our stuff done. All right. And that's just how that's part of who we are. And mom and dad are always going to know and pay attention whether that's happening or not. The second thing I always tell them though is we are the ones who see the invisible people. Like our eyes, and I describe to them what that means. Like the kid who doesn't have any friends, the kid who might have something that makes her different in some way. We have eyes for that kid. We include them in different ways. And I tell my kids, you won't get in trouble ever for getting a B in a class or a certain grade in a class. I just want to see the effort you put in and that you challenge yourself to grow. But boy, there's going to be a lot of hurt if I find out that you made life hard for an invisible kid at the school. That's what we don't do, right? We don't do. So imagine if all the parents in the community give that same message. Imagine if all the kids show up understanding how critical that is. Then we have a truly inclusive community. And the easiest thing is, remember that birthday party I talked about? We just invite each other. That's it. Start inviting each other to different things, people you don't normally invite, connect with, and you will see things flourish, relationships flourish. You will see all sorts of cool. You know, one of the cool things that I came to see as I interacted with different people is when you talk about culture. One of the coolest things you see is a lot of times we think about culture, we think about clothes, we think about food, we think about those kind of things. But really what's so rich about culture is that the way that different cultures define words like freedom or openness or time or control that you see up here. So for example, on this slide, you'll see in the US culture, freedom might be do what you want, pursue your dreams. In my culture, freedom is more about doing what the larger culture, elders, and tradition wants you to do. In US culture, openness might be share anything all the time. Someone asks you how you're doing, you share very openly. In my culture, only the foolish reveal their heart easily. You don't talk about a lot of stuff. You keep that stuff in. Time. We think, and so what happens is as you open up and connect with different people, you start to not just notice the external things, but you start to understand the richness of how we interact with our minds and how different cultures value different things. And that allows us to understand each other more and connect with each other. But we'll never get here if we're not even feel comfortable, if we don't even feel comfortable sharing who we are. If we don't feel comfortable, if we don't have an inclusive environment, we won't even get to explore some of the deeper things. And one of the activities, if students watch this in class this week, this is one of the cool things they can talk about, a chart that they can fill in for themselves, compare with their classmates. How does my family define this? What does culture mean for me? And these things is something I recommend. All right, so those are the first 2 sections. The first section is, hey, be confident in who you are. Be radiant. Don't hide who you are. Don't be ashamed of your family. No one should be at all ashamed of their background in any way. The second thing is, we all have to do our part to create that inclusive community. And that starts by recognizing that all of us can ignore that A group sometimes. Every single person, and we all have to work hard to have the eyes to see those people, to see people who don't naturally fall into the B group for us. And how special it is. You literally can have people coming up to you 20 years from now saying, thank you for what you did for me. This is a message for the parents, message for the administrators, and even for the staff. When I present this to staff, Ebony, you know what shocked me is how many staff come up to me and say, I've been invisible for a long time as a staff member, and I need someone to see me, right? So I've seen that. So it's really a human thing. It's not a role thing. We all can benefit from this, in my view. Now, the final message I'll give you, and this takes a different take on being who you are. I feel compelled to share this aspect of the message because this is a challenging time for our country. Our students are going through so many things. One of my favorite metaphors that I like, that helps me on my work with social emotional learning, is the metaphor of sunlight. And the idea is that you learn in science class through photosynthesis, the way plants get energy is, they take the sunlight and they convert it into energy for the plant. In the same way, human beings need energy. We need to be energized, right? Some of the energy comes from what I talked about, being inclusive, from feeling like you can share who you are. But there are also unique to every single person in the Lake Park community. We have activities that energize us. And during this pandemic, during this challenging time, we have to know what those activities are. And I'm going to make a recommendation on how we need to energize ourselves. And it's a core part of being who you are. So, for example, a lot of people don't know this about me, Ebony, but when I was in my second year in college, I almost dropped out. I had such a rough time. But one of the things that helped me survive was one of my favorite activities in the world is playing basketball. And I didn't even make Wheaton North's B team my freshman year, let alone play sophomore year. So I wasn't that good, but I just love it. It energized me. I'm still convinced to this day that because I knew that about myself, that was something that could keep me going, just going to the gym 5 times a week and playing for 2 hours, that helped me graduate. And I'm making an argument that your students, all the students have to, one of the things you can learn about who you are is the things that energize you, the things that make you smile. Figure that out while you're in high school and take that with you and be able, the ability to energize yourself is really a critical skill. Because we all get beat up in different ways in life. Like I told you, a lot of people would not imagine that someone from my background would drop out of college. I was this close to dropping out without having, so because life can get hard in unexpected ways for anybody, right? And we all got to understand that. So what I encourage people to do is always have a sunlight list. That's a list of activities that you enjoy that energize you. So for me, working out, talking to friends, on my phone. I play this game called Clash Royale for like 10 minutes. I'm sure some students play it. I meditate sometimes. I meditated this morning for 10 minutes. I coached 8 seasons of basketball the last with kids over the last few years. I love it. All I have to think about is teaching 7, 8-year-olds how to dribble a ball. It gives me energy. I play this game called Seven with my wife, playing games with friends. So I want every single person in Lake Park community to have an energizer list. Sunlight list. And here's the key. Okay. Here's the key. When we did this with workshops all over the country, what we found is there's usually 4 categories that emerge of sunlight activities for people. And the first is usually in art. So for me, music is a big thing. I have a guitar in my office here. I listen about at least an hour of music every day. For others, it might be painting or drawing. Under self-care, journal. That helped me a lot when I was in high school. Journaling for 10 minutes. Meditating is critical. Exercise. Find something that works for you in the self-care category. Prayer is a big one under self-care for a lot of people. Relationships, any kind of time with friends. So taking walks. I have a friend near here I take walks with. During the pandemic, I would connect with my friends in other ways. And then experiences, going places, activities. Don't you even feel positive reading this list and thinking about how you can do this stuff? So when a pandemic is getting you down, a big part of knowing who you are is being who you are is knowing what energizes you. And what I would challenge everyone in the community, from the principal, the superintendent, all the staff to the parents and students, is get at least 15 minutes every day. This is actually a friend of mine who's a doctor, is the one who really taught me this, how important this is. And I found this to be very effective. And what you do is you take this with you for the rest of your life, this understanding. And high school is a phenomenal time to pay attention to what energizes you. Is it, like I said, for me, it was playing basketball, even though I didn't play on a team for 3 years, right? Things like that, right? So knowing this, coming to know oneself, it really gives you so much power, in my view, Ebony. And that's really what I'd share with the community. And if people want to connect moving forward or have questions or anything like that, you can always learn more about what I do at Mawi.com. I'm on Twitter a lot at Mawi Asgedom. And then this is actually a kid, in case you didn't believe me, he didn't want a sandwich. He wanted Chinese food at Midway Airport. I have a receipt there to prove it, that I was buying this kid what he wanted because he told me what he did. So, hey, I don't want to see you at the airport talking about, oh, Mawi, I liked your presentation. It was a good presentation. And I was just like, okay, that's nice, but I shared my story. How about your story? You have a story. Your story matters. The reason that the district brings people like me in isn't for me to share my story. It's because every single student watching this, every parent watching this, every staff member watching this, every community member watching this has their own story. That's right. You have your own story. And a guest speaker like me should give you at least one idea that makes your story better. That's the whole point, and makes the community's story better. And so that's why I always talk about application is so critical for all the guest speakers that come to present to you, so that you get something out of it, right? So I hope out of those messages, y'all are able to apply that. And then the final thing I'll share, a piece of culture, Ebony, is one of my big learnings about culture that I had to learn about was in my culture, we don't talk about love the same way we talk about it in the States. So in the States, when I first came here, all the songs were like, I love you, love you, love you, love's in the air, all that kind of stuff. In my culture, we never talk about love really. And my parents never told me that they love me, for example. And I was wondering, why is it all these other families talk about love all the time? And then I went to meet my grandma, who's this woman that you see here. And the entire time I was with my grandma, and I met her after over 20 years in the States. The entire time I was with her, my grandma put her hand on my shoulders. And here's the kind of thing she would say to me. She'd say, which in my language means, may you live to see your children's children. Or she'd say, kem shehkun, which means, may you have the brilliance and power of 1,000 people. And I realized in my culture, the way we express love is we bless one another. And I thought back to all the times my family had blessed me. Remember that chart I showed you about how each of these words like freedom, love means different things. That's the cool thing we can explore about culture. I realized, wow, my family's been showing love for me in all these ways. I just figured it out all these years later. And so I thought as we wrap up, it would be special to share my favorite blessing that my grandma gave me. Lake Park community, you can keep it in your hearts and take it with you as you find your sunlight, as you include each other at new levels, as you brilliantly share who you are without any fear or shame, right? So here's what my grandma said. Go ahead and put your hands. Go ahead, Ebony. Put your hand on your shoulders, and this is the blessings. Ahay kewak aka, ishoch kewak aka, kablali nabtahti amlach yahaluka, which means that the sun may not scorch you, nor the thorn pierce you, and from the heavens to the earth, may the Lord protect you. Thank you very much. I hope we get together in person sometime.
Maui, every time I get the pleasure of hearing you, you are an amazing storyteller. You are an amazing just inspiration to not only our students, but our staff, our community. And I am beyond excited to share this presentation with students this week as we celebrate National Culture Week. I took a lot of sticky notes and notes that I plan on putting on my computer to keep my sunlight going every day. And for all of the Lake Park community members, staff members, parents and students that were able to come on this evening to hear Maui, thank you for being here. Thank you to each and every person who will take the message and see Maui in the airport and get a free lunch. Maui, thank you for giving us contact information. I know that that's also important. Social media is big, and I know I follow you on Twitter, and I'll definitely send something out after tonight.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ebony. I look forward to getting together in person again, and best of luck, Lake Park community. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Good night.
Yes, good night.